Okay, maybe not the entire build. Those Dark Riders back there, I don't think got any buffs. The crossbow ones, I don't know, maybe they did. But certainly Malice, at least Sarkhan, dies much, much slower. We've got Dread Knights here who got a pretty nice, I think, HP buff, I want to say. A lot of the low-tier Dark Elf units kind of just got buffs here and there, including these Fierce Spears and the Corsairs. We've also got a Medusa, who I want to say had something, I forget, maybe like a stagger resistance or something, I don't know. Not 100% sure, but a lot of things in this build got buffed, and we're going to be trying it out. Rider of Rohan got a very appropriate build to his name. He said this is one that Falcon had showed him, and it's a build similar to something I've used against the Skaven. Yeah, already he's got my caster in a nice kind of blob of Illyrian Reavers there. A couple of Dragon Princes already harassing. Illyrian Reaver Archers coming in, getting a nice engagement on my repeater crossbows. Sunfang pops. You can see Tyrion already having a duel of the fates with Malice here. Very appropriate. These two kind of second life horse lords are dueling, duking it out here. So let's see who comes out on top. We've also got a Phoenix, bunch of archers hanging back. So this is very much like bow and horse build, which I'm a big fan of. And yeah, the Illyrian Reaver's kind of chilling around the side here. You can see I've taken up, just because of this map's deployment zone and kind of the way the engagement unfolded, I am a bit here in the woods, which is going to work to my advantage somewhat in terms of the infantry against cavalry fights. But yeah, a lot of this is already happening here in the center. You can see the HP bars of these two are very low as the two Elven Titans duke it out here. Yeah, Tyrion and Malice both have just gotten savage. Malice, I'm having to pop Sarkhan already, and here he is. New, less die. Yeah, let's go with that. A less die Sarkhan here. Scares away Tyrion, drops his big old Soul Stealer kind of thing, which unfortunately did not get these Dragon Princes that are mixed in here. Yeah, we've got the crossbows, though, kind of sitting back. Thankfully, their bolts will now pass through a few of these trees. The ones out towards this end of their range, they will not. They will get blocked, but it is somewhat of a benefit here. And we've been able to break quite a few units. Nice power spike from Murderous Prowess, but my caster is gone without basically doing anything, and these archers have mostly had free reign. You can see I'm failing to micro these Dark Riders very well, and finally just now getting them in. Thankfully, they do have the increased charge bonus of that Murderous Prowess. Did I saw Marshall earlier? I might have. 50 charge on these guys is actually quite nice. 31 attack. We'll get some good damage in there. During that time, Medusa comes forward to just occupy these archers. They're not shooting her. And in the meantime, the Dread Knights, the Knights of the Ebon Claw, are holding Tyrion in place, trying to finish him off. The Dragon Princes are also here, bailing out their lord, allowing him a pocket to try and escape from Sarkhan's clutches. Can he? The big lizard himself. He's not a lizard. He's a demon. Demon lizard thing. Lizard riding demon. There we go. Yeah, the Dread Knights are a big part of this too, just being able to keep Tyrion locked in place. You can see he gets his second life there. Unfortunately, Tyrion doesn't get an insane damage spike on his second life. I mean, granted, his second life doesn't kill him slowly over time, but there we go, another Bloodstorm. Give a little bit of damage resistance, a little bit of an explosion there. The Phoenix comes in. Unfortunately, the Frostheart Phoenix, or sorry, the Flamespire, really doesn't have a lot of weapon strength or splash damage, so it kind of struggles against these elite units, and now that the Dread Knights have a little bit more defense and HP, they can actually hold out against the Phoenix quite well, even with their limited model count and low HP. So yeah, Tyrion gets finished off by Sarkhan. The question is, though, if Rider of Rohan can kite me out here and wait till Sarkhan disappears, he might be able to weather the storm. It's a big if. He does still have the healing potentially on the Flamespire as well. But the thing is, I've got basically all of my ammo left on the Blood Rack. And I've got a little bit of ammo on these repeater crossbows as well, just a tiny bit. Plenty of kind of supporting chaff that's, I would say plenty. All the units are very tattered, but there's still plenty of units still on the field, which is typical Elves for you. Tyrion does recover his leadership, gets a little bit of extra healing from the Lifecaster, who's also back. They're kind of rolling around here, looking for trouble. And yeah, the Fear Spear's just kind of hanging around. I have to say, the low-tier Dark Elf units do seem to be more cost-effective, which is definitely a benefit to them. Dark Elves previously had the issue of they couldn't bring enough HP because their low-tier units really weren't good enough to justify their cost. even though you still kind of have to bring some of them, which is why you often see only Dread Spears, and that's still sometimes true. But Corsairs are definitely better than before. Like, I think before they would straight up lose to Rangers. I haven't tested it now. I want to say it kind of depends on if they have Murderous Prowess or not, but they probably could beat Rangers now, and certainly the Dread Knights, I have to say, in the few games I've seen them in now, I'm very impressed. Yeah, the Fear Spears and the Sad Swords, I mean, they would basically trade even with Empire State troops, more or less, and they cost 50 more because of their Murderous Prowess, right? And now, I think, maybe they would actually lose to State troops before if they didn't have Murderous Prowess. Probably. I think it's maybe like they would win 3 out of 10 engagements, maybe. But anyway, now they're much better. Malice is definitely a lot more usable too, since Sarkhan, I mean, previously he'd have been long dead by now, because he lasts a lot longer on his demon form. So that's a huge benefit, and it makes him quite a bit more viable to actually use in multiplayer. And here he was able to more or less beat Tyrion. I mean, in terms of cost, I want to say they're pretty close. Damage value-wise, of course, Malice is kind of weird because Sarkhan's damage doesn't count anywhere on this screen, right? So it's like you get about half the damage or less from him, then probably more damage from Sarkhan, honestly, if you use him right. And then, yeah, so that probably pays for himself, right? The caster, definitely not. She had a rough time. But Fear Spears, one of them paid for itself. The other one's pretty close. I guess 2 of them paid for themselves. The Corsairs had a little bit of a rough go. I mean, they didn't have a lot of great targets. They literally didn't have any targets. There wasn't any infantry in this army. So they kind of just got smashed by Dragon Princes. But, you know, sticking around, having the HP, a few of them did survive as well. Benefit to that there. The Dark Riders, very cost-effective here, going after the Archers, eventually able to pay for themselves. The Dread Knights, though, look at that, 2,800 damage value, 8,200 damage dealt. That is just beautiful. I'm a big fan of monstrous cavalry, heavy cavalry, and these guys, although, you know, they're kind of on the lower end of my list for that unit type, I'm still a fan, certainly, and that's cool that they're a lot more better, yeah. Dark Riders basically paid for themselves, and Medusa not quite, but the Terror, probably if you add that on top. Both Thrower just kind of had a rough go as well. Tyrion just about paid for himself, not quite, close to 10,000 damage value dealt. I'd be curious to do some testing on Sarkhan himself, like how the damage calculates, because if Sarkhan is like most summons, I want to say, yeah, it depends on like how the value is calculated on him, I think. But Tyrion probably, if you account for those 2, you know, Malice and Sarkhan together, he probably paid for himself, still lost, but that's kind of how it goes. Lifecaster here for healing more than anything. It's interesting, with Rite of Rohan's army, everything is just like a little bit short of where it needs to be. Phoenix, other than that, I mean, the Phoenix had a really hard time, but like the Reavers, the Archers, the Dragon Princes all did pretty well, but like just a little bit short of where they needed to be. It was decently close battle when you actually look at things that way, and especially these Dragon Princes, man, just crumping all of my Corsairs. Pretty hard time, but it's a fun one. I have to say, Dark Elves, I was previously saying they are the weakest faction in the game. I might have to reconsider that. I do need to get more games in with them. I'll be honest, they're not a faction I play very often. But kind of the potential for these more Horde-style builds, the fact that you have kind of more access to lower-tier troops, maybe not more, but yeah, you do. I mean, if we go ahead and let's just go to the custom battle screen. Like, Wood Elves and High Elves, both their cheapest infantry units are more expensive than yours, and you actually have 2, right, as the Dark Elves that are under 500, which is really nice. 450 for Sad Swords and Fear Spears, very cost-effective now, much more so than before. If we actually look, they do have better attack and defense straight up now than Empire Swordsmen, which I believe before they actually had worse. One of the 2, I don't remember exactly which one. I think it was defense, I want to say. Anyway, they just have slightly better stats overall now. Less HP, though, 500 less, which is pretty significant. But of course, they do get a power spike at some point in the battle, for sure, of Murderous Prowess. Yeah, so they're better now. The Fear Spears being the same cost makes them a little bit less cost-efficient when compared to the Empire State Troop Spearmen. But they do have a Silver Shield, which is better. Again, less HP, better leadership, though. A little bit faster, slightly more attack. Actually, a pretty good amount more attack, considering it's a spear unit. And plus 4 charge. Let's all sing praises for that. Yeah, fun stuff. They're definitely better now. Like I said, the Corsairs too, if we have a look at them versus Rangers. I kind of was hoping Ryder Rohan would bring some Rangers so I could get a clean engagement here between these two. Maybe not a clean, but, you know, like a real battlefield engagement. But Corsairs do have just better stats baseline. Of course, that doesn't account for martial prowess. Corsairs, though, also have less models, which is a big issue for them. Same weapon strength and no physical resistance. You have 50 more armor. Also have less HP, though. So, I don't know. Maybe Creative Assembly could consider bumping Black Art Corsairs up to 90 unit models. I mean, they're better than before, but I'd say they're still just worse than Rangers. I mean, I don't know, is 90 unit models worth that physical resistance and armor? Or the extra 15 models, I guess, is the difference there. Not to mention these guys have Woodsman, which isn't huge for an infantry unit, but it's there also. I don't know, what do you guys think? Corsairs, in a direct comparison to Rangers, still don't look amazing, but as an anti-infantry kind of infantry unit, they're still pretty decent. The 80 armor and leadership is not bad. In comparison to a lot of other units in this class, obviously, Flagellants are unbreakable, but they literally have 0 armor, and most kind of dual hand weapon DPS units tend not to have much armor at all. In fact, just thinking through, I'm sure you guys will correct me on one of them, but I can't really think of one offhand that has like very heavy armor. So 80 armor is definitely pretty solid, but that lack of HP always kind of meant that they just fall over super fast. I forget exactly what they gave them in the patch notes. I'd have to go back and look, but they seem to be a little bit better. And then, yeah, like I said, Malice, man, Malice I have to do some more playing with, but definitely seems pretty solid. The fact that you, yeah, 2100 is not too bad if we compare him to, let's see, Tyrion here. With a kind of a realistic kit for Tyrion, I probably would cut all of these. Unless, maybe against Dark Elves, actually, if I think I'm going to come up against a character who has good stats, maybe I'd take Feigned Riposte. But definitely Heart of Avalorn and Sunfang. Yeah, see, Tyrion is more expensive, and again, his second life is arguably worse. It is better in the way that he doesn't die straight up from it, but at least Zarkan dies much slower now. He does have more armor, less HP, and just kind of better stats overall to begin with than Malice. Doesn't have the same ability set. Sunfang is nice, but it doesn't really help in this kind of head-to-head between these two, right? Whereas Malice's abilities, he's got this melee defense debuff, which is very good against High Elves in general, but just in, I would say, against everyone in general. Melee defense debuffs in an area of effect are very strong. A Blood Price does give him damage resistance while also causing damage to himself, but a massive power spike on his weapon strength, so he can hit very hard. Of course, he does have a little bit of passive regeneration, plus 8 hit points per second while he's in melee, and an additional 5% damage resistance, so he definitely can do some stacking. The issue is, of course, both these abilities do a little bit of damage to himself, which, yeah, you know, Malice's mechanic is just that he dies, right? And that's still true, but at least he dies slower now, so maybe he can actually use his strength in the meantime. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching that one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, all that jazz. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.